So, after reviewing the GPD Win 4, I thought, why don't I review the GPD Win Mini as well? The GPD Win Mini is not a laptop and it's not a handheld. It's a hybrid. All of the benefits of a clamshell, all of the benefits of a small form factor, and the power to run the newest PC games with the Ryzen 8840U processor. This is probably the most unique handheld that I've had a chance to review, and so I'm excited for this one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be reviewing the GPD Win Mini, which is this small little laptop handheld hybrid, and it is the 8840U version, so the newest one available, because they've had a few, and it's good to remember which one we are reviewing because there are a few out there. Let's jump right into the specs so you can see how much they packed into such a small form factor device. And special thanks to WhatGeek for sending this device over for review. As usual, they have no input in what I say, and they haven't seen this review ahead of time. They have the GPD Win Mini starting at $1,099 with free shipping worldwide and free returns and different payment methods. So what all do you get for $1,099? This laptop handheld hybrid is packed with a lot of different things. There is the Ryzen 8840U processor with a Radeon 780M GPU, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar at least with this. It's in a lot of different handhelds at this point, including the GPD Win 4 that we just reviewed, and it is pretty much on par with the Z1 Extreme that's used in the Asus ROG Ally X for performance. Except this is a whole much smaller form factor. This has 32 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, which is absurd for the size, and this model here has a 512GB 2230 SSD. But they do sell a 2TB version, or you can just replace it yourself with another 2230 SSD. The screen is a 7-inch 1080p 120Hz with variable refresh rate, which is just lovely to see, and something that the Win 4 is missing, unfortunately. This is also a native landscape display, not portrait, so there's no wonkiness like you'd see on something like the Lenovo Legion Go, for example. There's a backlight keyboard, Hall sticks, USB 4 port, 44 watt-hour battery, and there's a whole bunch more. This year's edition removed the Oculink port in favor of a USB-A port, and as somebody who has a USB 4 eGPU and nothing Oculink, it actually serves me better to have a USB-A port. For such a small device, they actually crammed a whole bunch into this, and it's amazing that it is this small of a device and it has that much power inside of it. They do make a bigger version of this called the Win Max, and I'd love to get my hands on one of those as well. But for today's video, we're going to be talking all about the GPD Win Mini and this small little laptop handheld hybrid that is just so cool. So the key selling point of this device is to have a device that is both productivity oriented and gaming oriented, or at least that's kind of how I see it because it's a mishmash of both of them. And so you have the whole keyboard here, you have your whole controls there, and we'll talk about the keyboard first. And it pretty much mirrors my thoughts of the GPD Win 4. The keyboard is here, and besides the GPD Win 4, which it was something that you had to slide up to get to, it is right in your face. You can touch any key you want, you can play with it, do whatever you want, and that makes it so much easier to use than the Win 4 was. But I won't say that you could write the next great American novel on this. It is still a smaller keyboard in a very small way, and so I found it being very useful for very quick hotkeys. If I wanted to do Windows key and D to get to the desktop, or Alt-Tab, or very quickly enter my name, that sort of thing. But I didn't find myself wanting to write an email on here or start typing out things for my website, for example, if I had to edit something on there. So it's quite limited in that scope. I wouldn't say it's something that you'd get very comfortable using over time either. But if you want to use it laying down and then just tap with like each finger as if you're some sort of 60-year-old man trying to use technology for the first time, then it works fine, but it's not a great experience, put it that way. However, the touchpad is a great addition, and I actually found myself using it for Civ 5. Made it very helpful to use it in a game like that, or I'm imagining other strategy games, but Civ 5 is kind of what I play. Otherwise, just navigating around windows and navigating around other things. The touchpad just being there front and center is a super good addition that I just didn't expect being helpful at all. Now, the controls are where things get a little bit interesting. I mentioned before that these are Hall effect sticks, and they are recessed quite a bit. The D-pad is the standout as usual with GPD products. It's a mimic of the Vita D-pad, and the buttons, while on the small side, actually feel just fine. I'm still going to stand by the fact that I've said for pretty much every GPD product that the buttons should be bigger at this point, but unfortunately they're whatever size they are here. The triggers themselves are linear analog triggers because they have to be at this price point, and they feel good in both first-person shooters and racing games. I didn't have an issue with them. Now, feature-wise, there is one feature missing that is on the GPD Win 4 that I found weird isn't included on this, and that is fingerprint unlock. The GPD Win 4 has it, and you could use it there, but this, which is a quasi-laptop hybrid sort of scenario where you would expect to have a fingerprint unlock, doesn't have it. And I found that a weird omission because you would expect that a laptop would have it, but the Win 4, which is more of a actual handheld, wouldn't. And so it's a little weird, but that's really the only thing that I found missing, or not missing, but just not included that they usually do. And I would like to have that included in the next update of whatever they're doing for this. So I'm sure the very first question that you have, because it was my first question, how comfortable is it to hold this? Because it is just a laptop, a small one. And so you have to use your controls in a weird way. They're very much different than normal controllers, and it is very much a completely new design and all of that sort of thing. So you're probably wondering, how comfortable is it? And I have to say that it is surprisingly decently comfortable. I'm not going to say completely comfortable. It is not a Steam Deck OLED. It is not an ROG Ally X, but it is better than I expected in so many different ways to just hold it like you would normally a device. And I don't find that anything really gets in my way. The bottom is curved here, and that's still fine. And it feels fine. And I'm surprised at that because you would expect, given the nature of how this is designed, that it would not be comfortable at all, but it is actually pretty comfortable for a device that is like this. And I didn't find myself having an issue holding it for multiple hours or things like that when I'm holding it. So that part is good, but obviously it could be a lot better. You'd have to get rid of the keyboard, and then that kind of defeats the purpose of the entire device of what they're going for. Now, the main problem that'll keep you from holding this for a longer period of time is the heat, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because as you would imagine, a device this small is generating a lot of heat, and it has to go somewhere, and unfortunately, it goes in the wrong places. Software-wise, we are running Windows 11 on here, of course. You can put Bazite on here if you wanted to, and I didn't test that because I am a Windows guy through and through, but from what I understand, you can do it. For me, I love Windows, and Windows is exactly where I want to be, and that's exactly what you can do on here. Now, I shared this in my Win 4 review, but the documentation for the software that's included with the Win Mini and the Win 4 is kind of lacking. So there's a bunch of built-in GPD software that you just don't know how to use and doesn't really tell you what to do. So what I found to be the best is to install a program called Handheld Companion, and that gets you everything that you would want out of a normal handheld device like this. So you can customize the TDP, you can customize your resolution, your frame rate, all that sort of thing, and it's all in Handheld Companion along with hotkeys and all of that. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but if you are going to get one of these, I would highly suggest installing Handheld Companion. Like other GPD products, the speakers on this aren't that great, and so I install a program called FX Sound as usual on most of these devices to get the sound to be a little bit better, and you can adjust it to the gaming mode to do so. But out of the box, the way it is, the speakers aren't very good for a device that's this expensive. And I'm going to chalk that up to maybe not having anywhere to put them, or maybe having to cheap out on them because of the nature of how small this device is and all that sort of thing. But FX Sound does help in making them a little bit better. Okay, so let's talk about the heat problem now. The Win Mini, as you can expect with an 8840U processor, has heat problems. There is a fan in here that gets very loud and grindy if you listen to it, and not a fan of it at all. So the general recommendation, because this device only goes up to 18 watts, although you can unlock it to 28 watts with a BIOS update through GPD, I cap it at 15 watts, because if I go any higher than 15 watts, everything is burning. And I'm being a little bit hyperbolic there, but my fingers will burn because the heat is congregating exactly where your fingers are. It is on the buttons and it is on the D-pad. And also, it's on the back. And so every spot that your fingers are in is getting warm to hot. And if you go over 15 watts, that is the problem. You're going to feel it. Thankfully, games actually run pretty well at 15 watts, and I haven't really found an issue with keeping it there. But you're going to lose out on performance compared to something like an Asus ROG Ally X that can go up to 25 or 30 watts and be comfortable because it's bigger and it has more heat spreading that it can do. Where here, you have to cap it to 15 watts. So you're going to lose out on some performance compared to other devices in this price range. And that's just something you have to give up if you want a device like this. Now, a benefit of capping this at 15 watts is it helps with the lower battery size. Because this is a 44 watt-hour battery, you can't expect it to last as long as an ROG Ally X. As much as I would really love to have that, it just doesn't do that. So 15 watts, what I found is I could play a game like the Final Fantasy 16 demo at 900p and FSR on and frame gen and all that sort of thing, and it'll get roughly about 2 hours or so of battery life at 15 watts, which is not bad. It's actually pretty good. And then you go on and on again, but the best that I found is if I was running Super Mario World, for example, and the lowest TDP, which is around 9 or 10 watts or so, because it still needs quite a bit to run, and you would see about 4 to 5 hours of battery life as the max, and that's what I would assume is the max, even if you're just browsing the internet and all that sort of thing. So 5 hours or so is the top end, an hour and a half to 2 hours on the low end, if you're capping at 15 watts, is the general range, is what I can see. Now, you might be wondering, what can you actually play at 15 watts? And the answer is quite a bit. There isn't anything lacking on that front. It doesn't take it from unplayable to playable if you go from 15 watts to 20 watts or 25 watts, or whatever it is. You're all in the same range. And so, looking at emulation first, and GameCube and Wii, and we set it to 1080p and basically just forget it. You can add some HD textures and all that sort of thing, but battery life you'll see about 3 to 4 hours playing GameCube, and that's pretty good. Wii U is more of the same, except at a slightly higher TDP than GameCube does. About 3 hours of battery life. Not many Wii U exclusive games that are left, but if you want to play Wii U, then you can on here. On the PS3 end and any other systems going forward, you will be limited by the 15 watt TDP, but it doesn't seem to affect the emulation that much. Just playing games on PS3 and you'll get about 2 to 3 hours of battery life. The major limitation here is the emulation progress, but games play pretty well, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Xbox 360 is a system that does like to use a lot more than 15 watts, and I didn't find it to be too much of a concern here as well either. Playing some Eternal Sonata or any other games like that, Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, you should be mostly fine for all of that at 15 watts, but you're going to feel the heat even at 15 watts on the controls. And then just quickly ending off the emulation side, and Switch is more of the same. You could play it docked 1080p and you'll have a lot of a good time just playing most of the Switch catalog that is actually playable for emulation. And didn't find an issue with Brilliant Diamond, but maybe there might be a few games out there that might have a problem. Now the part that you probably are waiting for is the PC game side. And so I was playing some Black Myth Wukong here, and we are at 900p, FSR set to 60, frame gen is on, all settings on low, and it isn't actually a bad time here. If you want to play this on the go, you can, but I think this deserves to be played on a full-blown PC. However, there is something awesome about playing this on a GPD Win Mini. It just feels pretty funny, and it's actually really cool to do so. Taking a quick look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, thanks to Game Pass, and we are at 900p with balanced graphics preset, and FSR 3.0 set to balanced as well. The game runs pretty well, and it is above the VRR range, but the Mini does get very toasty doing this. I think overall, gaming-wise, you lose out a bit on performance by just not being able to jump to a higher TDP like other devices can do, but I don't find that it really affected things that much. At 15 watts, this actually does quite well. So to keep the heat low and to keep the fan from not killing your ears, 15 watts is a good sweet spot for this device, and it is actually pretty good to be able to play most games that you want to play. I think this is as good a time as any to just wrap up for today. Overall, this is a very interesting device. It's not quite a laptop, and it's not quite a handheld, and it doesn't overly succeed in either of those individually, but as a combination, it actually works in a way that you just don't expect. From the single perspective that nobody else is doing anything like this, I think this is a really interesting niche device, and you have to know exactly what you want to purchase this. But if you think about it, what else can you purchase that is a clamshell, is this small, and you could fit in a very small sling bag, or if you're using cargo pants because it's the 1970s still, you could put these in your cargo pants or something like that. There is nothing else like this out there, and this is very cool because of that alone. So that's kind of the positives. The fact that you can just close it, throw it in a bag, and bring it with you, and it is a full-blown PC. There is USB 4 integration, so if you're at home, you can dock it and then use it as an actual computer. And the footprint, all of that, and the power, everything in here in this small footprint is a very big pro. Now, the negatives are the heat that it generates, the battery life, the lack of software documentation of what you should be doing, and the fact that this is kind of a tinkerer's device. You have to know Windows, or at least know Bazite if you're going to throw that on there, and you have to know your way around technology, because if you run into an error, you are on your own. You're going to jump into the Discord to search around and figure out how to fix it and all that sort of thing. It isn't a well-documented device in that way. But if you can get around that, there is a lot to love here. And so is this worth a few $100s more than the competition? The Ally X, the Legion Go, the Steam Deck, all of that sort of thing? And the answer will be person dependent, because this, in my mind, is a very niche device. You have to know what you're exactly looking for, which is a device like this. You want something very portable. You want something that can dock and do USB 4. You want something completely different than what's on the market today. And you want something that looks visually really nice and professional and all that sort of thing. And so you would jump for this. But I can't say that I would recommend this to every single person. This is one of those things where you are gonna be that target audience. And if you are that target audience, you know who you are. And so as long as you're okay with the downsides that I mentioned, then yeah, I mean, honestly, if this had the Ally X's 80 watt hour battery in this, I would be hard pressed not to use this as a daily device. This is actually really cool. And I'm super excited that I got one because it is better than I expected. It is something that I would love to use on a daily basis if we can get that heat fixed, if we can get the fan fixed, and we can get the battery fixed. And if you do all of those, I will line up first person to buy the next iteration of this for sure. So that's going to be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about the GPD Win Mini and other handhelds. Support me on Patreon if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.